A year ago, I came across this image, a fragment of the Veil Nebula produced by the Hubble telescope, and it became my inspiration. I determined I wanted to see if I could push my telescope and my developing skills to producing something like this. It was, for me, more than just a technical challenge. I have always found the entire Veil Nebula to be one of the most beautiful and fascinating objects in the sky. It is a gorgeous monument to a star system long gone, the result of an enormous star going supernova some 10,000 years ago. A beautiful demarcation of when stars come to an end, but not just an end, it is a luminous harbinger of new beginnings, meaning that it carries enriched elements, the stuff from which new worlds and new star systems will eventually form. This is the nature of our cosmos. The ending of stars become the birth of new worlds. I began this project after completing LDN 673, a region of dark nebulae silhouetting a tapestry of jewel-like stars from the inner arm of the Milky Way. At the time, there was about a quarter moon to contend with. However, by the time the witch's broom rose high enough in the sky to begin imaging it, the quarter moon was already low in the west. And it was below the western horizon for much of the night. I'll tell you from the outset of this video that this project is not done yet. I intend to get 200 to 300% more integration time on it. However, this is as much integration as I could collect before cloudy nights set in. I like to open up the observatory a couple hours before dark so that the temperature can equalize. And especially during these extremely short summer nights, every moment of darkness is precious, so it gives me an opportunity to do a systems check and make sure everything is working well. When the sun sets, about 20 minutes before nautical dark, I set the Green Swamp server to tell the mount to begin sidereal tracking. Run a 3-point polar alignment just to double check the alignment. You might be thinking that's redundant since the telescope sits on a permanent pier, and by and large you'd be right. But for whatever reason, I'm sure a software engineer could answer it. I find that Nina will guide the telescope toward the chosen target more accurately if I run a 3-point alignment before beginning the night's shooting. I was fortunate at the beginning of the project because the 3 nights I have had so far to work on this fragment of the witch's broom have been gorgeous. Windless, low humidity, and with excellent seeing and very little turbulence. And it is on nights such as these where one truly comes to appreciate the priceless value of living beneath a dark sky. Outside the cottage, in the little glade where the observatory sits between the thicket of forest all around, the Milky Way traced across the sky like a ghostly pathway, while the observatory was able to shoot sub after sub of crystal clear information. The biggest problem I had with shooting, much more of an issue than the difficulties with the filter wheel, were the extremely short summer nights. At the time I began shooting this project, nights of nautical to astronomical darkness were less than 5.5 hours long. And due to having to contend with a dying filter wheel during that time, I was only able to gather 418 minutes of integration. But that is LRGB information shot beneath a dark sky. And in terms of information richness, that's worth 3 to 5 times narrowband information shot beneath light pollution, so it's enough to work with. I really want to get 20 hours or 1200 minutes total integration on this target, but that'll have to wait. Right now, we have more than enough to move this project along. Using a monochrome camera shooting LRGB, my usual shooting strategy is 50% on luminance and 50% RGB. Since I live in an area with fickle weather where temperature and cloud cover can change rapidly, I change filters fairly frequently so that the statistical averages of gathering sufficient data on all channels is good. To accomplish this, I shoot 60-second subs with 60 minutes on the luminance channel, then 20 minutes each on the red, green, and blue channels, then the sequence repeats. I always do my stacking in PixInsight's weighted batch preprocessor. I know I frequently criticize PixInsight's non-layer based and somewhat awkward and backward ways of going about image developing, but it does have a great photo stacker. And I use it for a few other tools, which it does really well. So my stacking and my initial processing always begins in PixInsight. And here begins anticipation. I know from experience this much information is going to take right about 3 hours to stack. When it's done, however, we're going to end up with 4 truly gorgeous masters. These are some of the best initial masters I've ever gotten, and I attribute that to the extraordinarily clear, nearly perfect conditions that occurred during the nights I was shooting these first 3 nights of integration on this target. Now it's time to prepare the masters for initial developing. This part is very routine, pretty much the same for every image. It's just early preparation to get the masters ready for more advanced developing in first a layer-based photo developer And then, if called for, additional developing in PhotoLab 8 to refine color, light, and detail. Part of my routine is I always organize the images luminance upper left, red upper right, and green and blue lower left and lower right respectively. This way, by habit, I just know where things are in this very routine part of the developing process. Now, I'll apply the screen transfer function to each master so we can take a look at them. Just look at that. Aren't they gorgeous? What really impresses me is this is less than 500 minutes of integration, but then the Witch's Broom Nebula is one of those extraordinary deep sky objects that I think it's just hard to take a bad picture of. But look at the luminance channel on the top left. There is such incredible quality in the lighting and detail. This is where a monochrome camera for astrophotography really stands out. So you can see I've already started running the blur exterminator. The first thing I do in the early processing is run the blur exterminator in the correct mode. I think my telescope is nearly optically perfect, unless the telescope has been buffeted about by a breeze or something more unusual, unique to country living, like an owl has decided to land on the telescope at night, causing reverberations. I'm not going to find any problems with my images, especially not the stars. Nonetheless, I always consider it a good idea to run the blur exterminator first in the correct mode, which is intended for correcting aberrations in stars. At worst, I lost a couple minutes doing a process that may not have been needed, but given the amount of time that it takes to shoot a single DSO, I'd rather invest a little extra time in redundancy to make sure I get the most quality out of the information. After blur exterminator has been run on correct mode on all the masters, I'm then going to run it on default mode, which is going to sharpen all the non-stellar detail and deconvolve and sharpen the stars. When that's done, I'll open the star alignment tool and select the luminance image as the reference image. Then I'll drag the tabs from the R, G, and B masters into the target images section and minimize the original masters. Then I'll run the star alignment tool. In about a minute, it'll produce 3 new registered R, G, and B masters that have been aligned perfectly to the luminance master. Now, it's time to derive a color image out of this monochrome R, G, and B information. Before I do this, however, I need to balance the R, G, and B masters. This is a simple procedure. I'll open the statistics tool and drag the tab from each master into the statistics tool, watching for the median. The image that has the highest median will become my reference image. Then I'll open the linear fit tool and drag the tab from the image with the highest median into the reference box. Then I'll drag the action icon onto the other 2 masters. The linear fit tool will balance them in preparation for channel combination. You can see a difference in the balanced image when the linear fit tool is done. It'll often look off. That's because color balancing them changes how the temporary stretch through the screen transfer function affects the image. If you want to see what the image looks like after the linear fit tool has run its operation on the masters, just select each image and hit F12 to turn off the previous screen transfer function and run a new screen transfer function on it. You can't see me doing that here because I'm using the keyboard shortcuts to do so. That's F12 to reset and Ctrl-A to reapply the screen transfer function. With the RG and B masters color balanced, it's time to combine them. We'll open the channel combination tool and drag the tab from each RGB master into its respective spots in the channel combination tool and activate the tool. And in just a moment, it'll produce a color image using the combined information. We'll apply the screen transfer function to it to make it visible. Look at that. Such extraordinary color and detail, excellent for so little integration time. Now I'm going to clone this image and extract the stars from the clone. I like to use the screen transfer function stretch to get stars. I know some people don't care for it, they find the stars to be a little bloated, but I really like the screen transfer function stars. However, I don't care for how the screen transfer function treats non-stellar objects, so I'm going to clone the image and apply a screen transfer function permanently to the clone to get my stars from it, and use the original RGB image to get the non-stellar information. To permanently apply the screen transfer function, I click on the clone, then drag the STF action icon onto the lower bar of the histogram tool, and this sets the histogram tool with the screen transfer function stretch. Then I can just grab the histogram tool's action icon onto the RGB master, setting the STF stretch permanently onto the image. Then I'll run the noise exterminator to denoise the image and then the star exterminator to extract those stars. That will become my star plate for later usage in developing. Then I'm going to close the non-stellar version of this image and get it out of the way. Now, back to the original RGB image, I'm going to run the star exterminator with unscreened stars and generate star image unselected, but with large overlap selected. This will tell it to run a high-quality star extraction over an image on which no histogram stretch has been performed, and to discard those stars, we don't need them. For this image, I just want the non-stellar material. After the star exterminator has done its job, I'm going to run my perfect histograms in 60 seconds evolved method histogram stretch on the image. This will generate a low contrast, flat, but information-rich image that is perfect for developing in a layer-based photo editor. The perfect histograms method is very simple and very fast. You can get a perfect histogram every single time in under 60 seconds. Drag the image tab into the view section of the histogram tool so you can see the light curve you're working with. Then click the circular preview window icon. Drag the left triangular icon up to the beginning of the left side of the light curve and the middle icon up to the right side of the light curve. Zooming in horizontally is necessary to do this accurately. Then set your vertical zoom for 20 and scroll down to the base of the light curve, which will help you with final, accurate positioning of the left and middle icons. On the horizontal side, keep scrolling in and set the left icon near the innermost channel on the left side of the histogram. In this case, that's the red channel. Do the same thing with the middle histogram on the right. Keep zooming in horizontally to help you do this more and more accurately. You can see at this point I've zoomed in horizontally to 999. That's as much as the PixInsight histogram allows. Then on the horizontal scroll bar, I'll scroll and drag the leftmost icon to the inner channel of the light curve, and I'll position the left icon so the ray coming out of it intercepts the middle of the red channel, halfway between the bottom and the first bar. Now you're going to do the same thing with the icon on the right. Just scroll over till you can see it, then drag it left to the inner channel of the light curve. But in this case, imagine a vertical line coming right out the point. Place that imaginary vertical line where the innermost channel intercepts the first bar. This will result in an image with an unaggressive but sufficient black point, enough to drown out electronic noise, but not nearly as aggressive as the black points established by the screen transfer function stretch or the histogram alterations of many stretching scripts. And the right side of the stretch is gentle enough to keep the entire light curve inside the histogram, thus retaining all the information. This yields a final image which, on its own, doesn't look great. Initially, it might look soft and low contrast. And I find that many histogram stretching tools, they seem to be trying to provide a stretch that results in a more finished image. But that's not a good thing for layer-based non-destructive photo editors. A low contrast flat initial stretch retains more flexibility, giving us more to work with in a layer-based photo editor. And this stretching technique caters to that strategy. The final image that is produced from this method looks like this. Off screen, I'll run the noise exterminator on it. Now I'm going to process the luminance information very similarly. The only difference, of course, being that luminance information is monochrome, so I won't be doing the channel combination process on it. Since it is otherwise processed in the exact same way as the RGB information, I'm not going to show that here, it would just be too repetitive. I'll save the RGB stars, the RGB starless image, and the luminance starless image as 16-bit TIFFs. And now it's time to begin advanced development in my layer-based photo editor of choice, Affinity Photo. In Affinity Photo, I'm going to first drag in the RGB image, which establishes the color space, then the luminance image, and then the star plate. With the snap tool activated, the horseshoe up, middle, top, right, I can quickly and perfectly align each master over the other. Then I'm going to make the star layer invisible and drag it to the bottom of the layer stack just to avoid confusion. For those of you who are watching the video, later on I'll put the star layer back at the top of the stack when we add the stars back into the image. Now I'm going to combine the luminance information to the RGB information by selecting the luminance layer and choosing the luminosity composite mode, which has it add all of its light, shadow, and fine detail information to the RGB layer below. Now I'm going to select all the layers, including the star layer even though it's invisible, and rotate the information into the way I want this composition to appear. Nah, I don't care for that. I think I'm going to flip it over, rotating it back counterclockwise to the left. Rotating the information in Affinity Photo is very easy. All I have to do is select all the layers, go to the Arrange drop-down menu, and select Rotate Counterclockwise. Because the star layer was also selected, it was also rotated even though you couldn't see it, since the star layer right now is turned off, making it invisible. Now I'm going to right-click on one of the layers and select the Merge Visible option. This will create a new layer with the combined information from the RGB and the L layers. Then I'm going to group the original RGB and L layers and make the group invisible. We don't need them anymore. Now I'll move the star layer back up to the top, as we're going to need it in the next step of this processing. This also puts the original group at the bottom out of the way, which is fine because we're not likely to need it again. Now I'm going to put the star layer on and set the star layer's composite mode to screen so that we can see the stars applied to the image. And now I'm going to crop the image. Usually in my images I go for a minimal crop, but I want to get in really up close and personal and have this image portray the beauty, the light, the color, the energetic intensity of a fragment of the Broom Nebula. So I'm going to crop out a portion of the left side of the nebula and the bright star from the right side of the nebula and focus on the central 70 or 80% of the image. With the stars turned off, we can see the incredible intensity of this region of the image, but I want to crop into it yet a bit more. However, I'll get back to the rest of the crop a bit later. First, I'm going to frequency separate the starless layer. On the frequency separation tool, I'll pull the radius slider bar all the way to the right to entirely frequency separate it, and this will divide the high frequency information where detail is from the low frequency information where color and light reside. Separating the frequencies will allow me to work on each aspect of the image separately, so I can push the information harder while minimizing the risk of the development of artifacts. I think I'm going to go ahead and crop in a little bit more on the left and the right. It'll be easier for me to think about the composure of this image without that bright star interfering with it. And I only want to have the continuum of the fragment of the plasma showing within the image, so I'll just get the left side of the image out as well. Making the image small like this is also going to make it very fast to process. There's just less information to work with. Now I'll open a Levels tool, an extremely powerful brightness and color adjustment tool, kind of like a curves tool but in non-graphical form. In the drop-down menu on the Levels tool, I'll first select the red channel. In the Levels tool histogram, we can see the right side of the red channel light curve ends long before it reaches the right side of the histogram where clipping would occur. This means there is a lot of latitude for intensifying the red channel. I'll do that by pushing up on the white level slider bar about 12%, which actually brings it down to 88%. Then I'm going to do the same thing, first with the blue channel and then the green channel. This will intensify the colors in balance so I can get a better sense of what is happening to them as I increase each color channel's white level. And the reason I'm operating on the red and the blue channels first is because these are the predominant colors within this image. Changes to the green channel will shift the balance and should intensify both the green and the blue. I'll also push the black level or black point of each of the red and blue channels up just a little bit, which will erase the threshold of brightness at which those colors can appear, having the ultimate effect of darkening the space and helping those colors to stand out against the space. When I get the red and the blue intensity where I want it, it's time to address the green channel. Changes on the green channel will radically shift the balance or the presentation of blue and red within the image. An ideal adjustment to the green here should transform the blue into a kind of cyan electric blue, and intensify and deepen the red into a kind of red fire or red gem. The best way to do this, I find, is by increasing the gamma. An adjustment to 1.101 does the trick, sharpening up the appearance of green, causing it to intensify its effects on both the blue and the red channels. And as you can see, it also helps the fine detail, the lightning-like wisps and clouds beyond the main channel of the Broom fragment to stand out against space even more. I want to intensify that color, and an adjustment with the Vibrance tool is perfect for that. Vibrance adjustments are intended to intensify color while protecting the cerulean blue of a sky as well as skin color, and strong adjustments can be made on it with minimal risk of clipping color channels on the histogram. Since I think the red needs to be intensified more than the blue, I'll pull the Vibrance slider all the way up, which will help intensify that red considerably. And then I'll make a 16% positive adjustment on the saturation slider, which will further saturate the red and the blue equally, giving the red just a little bit more oomph and helping the blue, which is already intense, to stand out even more. Now the saturation on the blue and the red are good, but I want them to be brighter. I want them to be really striking within this image, like we saw in the NASA image produced by the Hubble telescope of a fragment of the Veil Nebula. So I'm going to go back to the Levels tool to further intensify the red and blue. I'm not aiming for the same color scheme, but the same intensity. A 2% increase in the red-black level will intensify the appearance of the red against darkness. Think of the way jewelers present gems by setting them on black velvet. A 2% increase on the red-black level creates black velvet for the red. When I am happy with that adjustment, I'll then switch over to the green channel, because changes to green are going to go a long way toward intensifying the appearance of both red and blue. On the green channel, the black level is set to 1%, the white level to 92%, and the gamma to 1.046. The setting of the black level pulls lingering green out of the space. The white level helps transform the blue to that electric blue that we are now seeing, and steepening the gamma level intensifies the appearance of both the red and the blue. And finally, another adjustment on the blue channel, increasing the blue's white level to 94% and steepening the blue gamma to 1.053, which is a pretty powerful adjustment. The gamma channel has a profound effect, but that gives us the lightning-like blue that we are looking for and which you now see appearing in the image. Now, I'm going to further intensify the appearance of the low-frequency information, the light and color within this image, by redoubling exactly what we already have. And the way I'm going to do this is duplicating the low-frequency layer, and then selecting the Add Composite mode. The Add Composite mode is very useful for an operation like this, because it adds information kind of like the Screen Composite mode, but respects the upper limits of light curves, so it's less prone to blow color or brightness information out. It's still stronger than what we want though, so with the layer selected, I'll go to the opacity drop-down window, grab the slider bar, and reduce the layer's opacity to 55%. Now, above both low-frequency layers, I'm going to open a Levels tool, and very slightly steepen or increase the gamma, which will intensify the appearance of all channels, black levels and white levels within the low-frequency information, intensifying brightness and color across the board. Now it's time to operate on the high-frequency information and improve the image's sharpness. I'll begin by opening a non-sharp mask in the high-frequency information, and dragging up on the radius slider until the main body of the Broom fragment looks sharper. If I see the image devolving into crunchiness, I'll pull down slightly on the radius slider. But we have a lot of light, a lot of information in this image, so there's latitude to work with. When that's done, I'm going to open up the Clarity tool, make sure the tool is placed above the unsharp mask, and pull up on its strength slider until I see the sharpness that I'm looking for within the image. The Clarity tool is like a mid-range fine contrast tool, affecting information sometimes left out by the unsharp mask, which is why the Clarity tool, placed above the unsharp mask tool like this, works synergistically with it, augmenting its effects. When I have the Clarity tool's adjustment where I want, then I'll open the High Pass filter and apply it to the image. For astrophotography, the High Pass filter's default composite mode of linear light is too strong. The composite mode must be adjusted to soft light. Then I'll just drag up on its radius slider bar until the image is sharpened where I want it. All these tools are designed to affect high-frequency information. That's the part of any image where fine detail is contained. But these tools can easily create artifacts in low-frequency information since they are not designed for it. By separating the high from the low-frequency information early on in development, sharpening with these tools can be pushed further with minimal risk of artifacts. Now, in the darkest regions of space within this image, we see some crunchiness happening following the use of those sharpening tools. That's pretty typical. Dark regions have less information, so they are more prone to being over-affected by sharpening tools and becoming crunchy. We can easily deal with this. I'm going to select all three sharpening tools and hit Ctrl-I to invert them. This removes all their effects from the image. Then I'll select the Paintbrush tool, set its opacity and flow to 100 but its hardness to 0 to make a nice soft but dense brush, and select the white color, and then paint over all the brighter regions of the image where there is an abundance of information. In this way, the three sharpening tools apply their effects to the information-rich regions of the image and leave the space alone so that the space does not become over-sharpened, aka crunchy. Now, let's turn on the star plates and see its effects on the image. That looks great. I want to refine those stars just a little bit though, make them a little smaller, more compact. This is easy. I'll just open a Curves tool only in the star layer so it only affects the stars, and draw down on it a little, making a very shallow inverted C-curve. This will pull in the appearance of the stars, shrinking them and intensifying them just a little bit. I'm very happy with this, but even without the space being sharpened, it's still a little bit crunchy, and that's because the image does not yet have quite enough information, quite enough integration time. Like I said, I think this image really needs a minimum of 12 hours of integration and maybe as much as 20. The more integration it has, the sharper and more refined will be the appearance of the Broom fragment, and the cleaner the appearance of the surrounding space. But for now, I'm going to execute a small compromise and clean up the space artificially. I'm just going to open a Gaussian blur tool and very lightly drag up on the tool just enough to smooth out the appearance of that space. Then I'm going to hit Ctrl-I, inverting the tool, thereby removing its effects from the entire image. And just like I did with the sharpening tools and the high frequency information, I'm going to open a brush, set its opacity and flow for 100% and its hardness to 0 to make a dense but soft brush, and select the white color, and paint back in the effects of the Gaussian blur tool, but only in the region of the dark space. You can see it right here, down to the bottom left. This allows the Gaussian blur to affect only that region of space, smoothing out that slight bit of blotchiness. I think I can further enhance and improve this image a little bit by operating on it in PhotoLab 8. So I'll turn off the star layer, run the noise exterminator on the starless image, and export it. The image does not need much done to it though. In PhotoLab 8, I think I can improve it a little bit by pulling down slightly on the shadows and the blacks in the selective tone slider, just enough to further darken the space a little bit, which helps the nebula structure to stand out better. And furthering that goal of helping the nebula structure to stand out better, I'll pull up very slightly on the midtones and highlights on the Selector Tone tool. These small adjustments have a dramatic effect on the image, much mitigating the weakness in the space where there is not enough integration, and really helping the Broom fragment to stand out dramatically. On the Fine Contrast slider in the Contrast Tools section, a very slight adjustment of just 3 points helps to further sharpen the detail within the image. One of the really great things about PhotoLab 8 is its tools seem to be able to pick the high-frequency information from the low-frequency information without having to do frequency separation. I can push these tools really hard without introducing artifacts into the light and color. Finally, I'm going to go down to the Curves tool and select the Luminance channel. Adjustments on the Luminance channel affect brightness across all channels. Using the scroll box on the left lower side of the Curves tool, I can very accurately scroll up the lower left side of the curve, which further pushes up the black level and intensifies how lights will build within the image. Pushing up to just 2 points is adequate, making a nice black point and making the image more dramatic. And now, since the predominant colors within this image are red and blue, I'll make an adjustment to the green channel, with the goal of further intensifying the appearance of those colors. On the lower left side of the curve, I'll use the same scroll box to increase the green's black point by 1. And I'll click and drag the curve on the upper right side, moving the end of the curve line a little closer to the right side of the light curve, which intensifies the role of green within the image. Overall, assisting the image by making the appearance of its lights and colors yet more intense and more dramatic. And a final, similar adjustment on the red channel on the light curve further intensifies and clarifies the appearance of red within the image. Overall, PhotoLab 8 was used to make very slight but important changes, further dramatizing how the Broom fragment stands out. Then it was exported as a 16-bit lossless TIFF back into Affinity Photo, where the stars are added back in, producing this final image, which you see here. This image is not yet complete, though with less than 500 minutes of integration in it, I'm pretty happy with it. Another 6 to 8 hours of integration will go a long way toward refining the detail within the image and allowing the surrounding space to be smoothed out naturally. And with any luck, the final image will be as dramatic and as refined as this fragment of the same nebula recorded by the Hubble telescope. In fact, let me just go ahead and zoom into the region that the Hubble telescope photographed on my image, and we'll compare my work versus the Hubble. A couple nights after the making of this video, there was another clear night. Now, I had to spend most of this night resetting up equipment since I had to replace a broken filter wheel. But I was still able to shoot almost 2 more hours of information. I shot this in HA since it was a full moon, and used my own process for adding the HA's high-frequency information to the image, yielding this final result, in which I've also taken steps to somewhat match the Hubble color profile. I think my image, made with a $1,200 telescope here on Earth, compares pretty favorably with a telescope that cost $16 billion orbiting over Earth. I'm not knocking what the Hubble did, I'd just like to see if I can emulate it. And I believe, with more integration time, my image will become even closer to the quality of the Hubble. As always, thank you for watching. The astrophotography developing techniques that I brought up in this video are on the moderate to expert level. But if you should have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. The Broom Nebula fragment and the Hubble emulation projects remain ongoing, as I continue to collect more integration time. But if you would like to see either, just pop over to the Sky Story Astrobin. The links are provided below in the description. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something useful and that it adds to your enjoyment of both astronomy and astrophotography. Now, get out there and shoot that amazing sky.